Great peace have they which love thy law. Nothing's going to offend them. Look, I didn't get hurt. She didn't get hurt. It's just a car, right? There's insurance. That's what it's for. So now here's the point. When people are reacting, many times it means they're not at peace in some area, right? Now this is what I'm setting up to. In 1 Timothy, I'm about to show you how every one of the 10 commandments are found in 1 Timothy chapter 1. I'm going to show you that. You want to see that? Every single one. Now, let me just say something before I show you this. If what I'm about to show you is actually there and you believe it and see it, as many commentators have, then Timothy becomes a book that's especially for God's people, because in Revelation chapter 14 and verse 12, it says at the end of time, what does it say? Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments and have the... Whoa. Now, how many want to see if they're there? Look at verse 9 and 10. 9 and 10. I'll read it to you and then I'll show it to you. Knowing this, that the law is not made for the righteous person, but for the lawless, the insubordinate, the ungodly, for sinners, the unholy, the profane, for murderers, for murderers of fathers and mothers and for manslayers and for fornicators and sodomites and kidnappers and for liars and perjurers, and if there's anything else or any other thing that's contrary to sound doctrine. Now let's go through those slowly. Now, verse 9. For the ungodly, the word there is specifically the word for worship, destitute of reverential awe, sebomai. They don't worship reverently. What commandment is that? If you're not worshiping God reverently, you're destitute of that. You're worshiping something else other than God. What commandment is that? First commandment. And the second commandment. Let's say you have so little disregard for God that you make an image and you worship the image. That is being ungodly, isn't it? And then what does it say next? It's not made for the righteous person, but for the lawless, insubordinate, ungodly, for sinners, for the unholy, and the profane. What's profanity? Pro means before. Phanu means the sanctuary, something before. What's profanity, though? It's taking the name of the Lord in vain. What commandment is that? Third commandment. For the unholy, it says there. For the unholy. You know what the word unholy is? Bebleos, or bebelos. Bebelos means unholy, but literally it means to walk all over something. When I read that, it caught my attention because I remember the text in Isaiah 58 verse 13. When people disregard the Sabbath, they walk all over His holy day. So what's that alluding to? At least in one form. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And so these people are unholy. They're walking all over the Sabbath day. And then next one, murderers of fathers and mothers. That should be pretty easy. What commandment are you breaking if you just, kill your parents? Certainly breaking the fifth commandment. How many of you would say that's very clear? Manslayers. What's that one? Thou shalt not kill. That's the sixth commandment. Whoremongers. Literally the fornicators. Fornicators in the New King James. King James, whoremongers. That's the word pornos, fornicator or adulterer. Thou shalt not commit adultery. That's the seventh commandment. Defiles themselves, it says next. In some translations, and in King James it says defiles themselves, and for others it says sodomites. The word there in Greek is arsenokoites. Arsenokoites. Arsen means male, and koites means the bed, or we get the word coitus from it. And it's, if you read the Septuagint, and Leviticus Septuagint is, from the Old Testament written in Greek, Leviticus 18:22 and 20 verse 13, forbids a man lying with another man as one would with a woman. So what is arsenokoites? It's homosexuality. Look at this. Now I want to stop here just a minute. Remember, their sin was a sin of what? Licentiousness. When Paul goes to the Ten Commandments, guess which one he amplifies? He amplifies the seventh commandment, and he adds in not just a classical form of adultery, he puts in homosexuality. The issue in 1 Timothy chapter 1. was role distinctions being broken down, but specifically role distinctions as relating to the seventh commandment, specifically homosexuality. Specifically what? And some people today would say Timothy has nothing to do with homosexuality, or the ordination debate has nothing to do with homosexuality. Well, my friends, it does, and here's why. In Timothy, everything that attacks any role distinction that's based on gender or anything else that the Bible claims to be a role distinction, or differentiation, you might say, is fair game. And that's what was going on in 1 Timothy. How many can see that? Then, man-stealers. Next. Man-stealer would be what? It says kidnapper. Literally, it's a slave dealer or a slave trader. And what commandment is that? Thou shalt not steal. Now, by the way, some people today in the women's ordination debate, they say, look, you know, if you don't ordain women, you're treating them just like slaves. Well, if you're reading 1 Timothy, there's a problem that you have here, because the Bible here in 1 Timothy is very clear that slavery is wrong. This is one of the texts that they read to do away with slavery. In fact, you want to hear John Wesley's notes? The worst of all thieves. This is based on this particular verse. The worst of all thieves, in comparison of whom highwaymen and housebreakers are innocent. What then are the most traders of Negroes, procurers of servants for America, and all who list soldiers by lies, tricks, or enticements? The worst thing you could do, according to John Wesley, based on this text, was to be involved in slavery. And by the way, when you're talking about this whole thing, those two are totally unrelated to one another in the text even here. Are you with me? That's commandment number 8. Remember, we said the 10 commandments were there. How are we doing? I have to find 2 more here in this list, and they're right there. It says liars and perjurers. Which one is that? Thou shalt not bear false witness. That's commandment number 9. And then it says, as it ends up the list there in verse 10, if there be any other thing that is contrary to hugneon, or sound doctrine. You know what the word hugneon is, by the way? Healthy. In other words, if you're not keeping the commandments, you're not healthy. So if there be anything else, by the way, remember the last commandment? Nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor. It's almost as it's lifted out of the 10th commandment. How many of you can see then that the commandments are what's being put in focus here by Paul? And by the way, it makes sense, because he was saying earlier that people are misusing the law. They don't understand the law. The whole context is the law. By the way, just before we leave the commandments, I can't, I want to just point this out. Role distinctions in the 10 commandments are very clear, aren't they? Thou shalt have no other gods. Don't put yourself in place of that. Don't have any graven images. Don't put that in place of it. Don't take the name that is meant for me and use it some cavalier way. Don't use it in a different role. Remember the Sabbath day. No other day. Are you with me? You see that? Don't sleep with someone who's not your spouse. And that includes a man if you're a man, or a woman if you're a woman. Everything about the 10 Commandments is related to defining what role distinctions are, and making the point that those role distinctions are from who? God. And if you keep them, what will happen? Great peace have they which love thy law. Nothing will offend them. And they'll be hugneon. It'll be sound doctrine. It'll be good doctrine. It'll be a kind of doctrine that keeps you healthy. Are you with me? Okay.